And welcome to Whiskey Politics. I'm Dave Sussman, your host and purveyor at Whiskey Politics. You can find me at davesussman.com, theindependent.io, the Range Broadcasting Network, your favorite podcast applications, including Apple Podcasts. Please give us a review and a rating, 5 stars preferably. That way others can find us. Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. You can also find us at the Ricochet Audio Network. Today we've got a twofer for you. Our first guest will be Stephen Moore, who is an economic advisor to President Donald Trump and is working right now in President Trump's Economic Recovery Task Force to try to get us back on track after being shut down 4, 5, 6 months in some cases, depending upon where you live. And it is having a profound and detrimental impact. And our second guest will be Buzz Patterson, who is running for California's 7th Congressional District, just east of Sacramento. It is one of the districts that the White House is looking at in the state of California that is extremely flippable. California 7, I think right now they are up a couple of 3 points. Buzz Patterson's is up a couple of 3 points, and we're going to talk about that. And really what we are most concerned about right now as we're heading into the last couple of months of the election is simply this. We have a situation right now where the prognosticators are projecting that President Donald Trump wins re-election by a landslide on November the 3rd. However, November 4th, 5th, 10th, 20th, December, who knows, once they have counted all of these mail-in ballots, which many people are deeply concerned about the fraud potential, the fact that there are no organizational structures that have been established in many of these states that have not done it on such a mass scale before, that we are now treating election 2020 as a dress rehearsal for a first run of something where everybody is deeply, deeply concerned. And one of the reasons I truly believe that the Democrats are pushing so hard, because they know that people will be voting for this president on November the 3rd, and their only way to possibly win is possibly shenanigans. So we will be talking about that with Buzz. Our first guest is going to be Stephen Moore, who is returning to talk about what is happening in the economy. We recorded this interview a little bit earlier at my office. And what my concern is right now, and I will just say this up front because this is not political. There are some political solutions or some political harmful measures that could be taken depending upon which way the election goes. But the reality that is on the ground right now with businesses all across the country, especially in some of our urban areas, some of our cities, is that there is a gutting of our cities. Their businesses are closing their doors. They are not reopening. Some of our larger corporations are already starting to either lay off people, furlough people, and reduce their footprint in downtown areas. When you have large banks and companies that no longer need 30, 40, 50% of their employees to come to work every day, they can now work from home. What is that going to do to the commercial real estate within those cities? And what is the domino impact going to be like? So if you don't need 500 or 1,000 employees coming into your cities in New York or Los Angeles, San Francisco, Dallas, wherever it may be, you only need 100. Those are 400 people that normally would have come into work every day, that go to the restaurants, that go to the dry cleaners, that go to the bars after work, that use parking and pay for parking and take trains and subways. And pay. The domino impact continues. And we are now starting to see that gutting having a profound impact on cities like San Francisco, where rents are dropping dramatically. We're seeing New York City, where rents have come down already as much as a half, and we're not at the end. We're not at the bottom of this. Is this a federal problem, or is this a state and local government problem? You know, we believe in federalism. We believe in the 10th Amendment. What should a president be doing right now in the way of helping out a New York City or a San Francisco or a Chicago, which does have an impact on the larger macro economy as well? So we're going to be talking about this. And one of the things I also want to talk with Stephen about is this national debt. We're all old enough to remember that before 2008, we were at $10 trillion in national debt, and we were mortified by this. Conservatives, Republicans, liberals, classic liberals especially, alike. And then from 2008 to 2016, we doubled that. We almost came to $20 trillion in national debt in just 8 years. Granted, there was a financial crisis. Granted, we had TARP and other measures that had to be implemented to provide liquidity to the banks. But since 2016, under a conservative president, who I know most conservatives support economically because of other measures, less regulations, lower taxes, and the like, have all been a boon for this economy. But the national debt has gone from 20 trillion, and we are now barreling towards $27 trillion. And that is before we get another 3 trillion, 2 trillion, whatever tranche it is. And that doesn't include the Federal Reserve balance sheets. So I want to talk with Stephen more about this, because what does this mean? I mean, are we talking about, listen, there's a reason right now gold is at record highs. Whether or not it stays up that high or not, I don't know. Some people are saying it goes up much, much higher, because we have essentially turned the value of the dollar into less than the paper it's written on. So what does that mean? Are we going to be looking at austerity measures? Are we looking at higher taxes? Deflation, inflation? What is going to be the impact of this once we get through this traumatic episode that we're in right now? So sit back, relax, pour yourself a drink, and enjoy our interviews with Stephen Moore and then Buzz Patterson. Stephen Moore is a White House Economic Recovery Task Force member working directly with Donald Trump. And it is great to have you back, and good to see you again, Stephen. How are you?
Super. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So let's get straight into it. Right now, we are just a few weeks, less than a couple of months now outside of the election. And we are seeing that obviously the economy is playing a major role in this election. Democrats have voiced their opposition to President Trump's payroll tax holiday ever since he signed the executive order doing so. You talk about this because you say that, well, there may be a little bit of shenanigans with the approach that the Democrats are taking here. What were you referring to?
Well, I've been a big advocate of this idea of rolling back the payroll tax for workers in this time of economic crisis. It's the best way, in my opinion, to stimulate the economy. But more importantly, it's Donald Trump's favorite idea. And so I've talked to him many times about this, and he's a big fan of it. And so he came up with this idea of suspending payroll taxes through the rest of the year. And Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi and many leading Democratic economists, and Chuck Schumer, the leaders of the Democratic Party, have really denounced this and said, oh, this is a gimmick and it's not going to work and it's going to hurt Social Security. And the irony of this is we found all of these old tapes because about 10 years ago when Barack Obama was president, he put in place a payroll tax cut. Back then, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. They were, oh, this is the greatest thing ever for the economy. It's going to help 150 million workers, and it's needed money in their pockets, and we don't have to worry about the impact on Social Security. But of course, now that Trump is doing it, they're saying exactly 100% the opposite. And, that's called a double standard. And obviously it makes them look silly.
Some would say that a payroll tax holiday is something that could be definitely useful to workers. Some others are saying that it's just negligible. It won't make a huge bit of difference, but it will impact the government. What do you say to that? And also to the fact that federal borrowing amid the pandemic has put us on path to exceed World War II. I think it's 98% of the fiscal year. We're looking as far as what servicing the debt is going to require for all of us.
Well, look, this is the price we pay for the worst mistake in the history of the United States, or one of the top 5, in my opinion, which was shutting down our economy back in March and April and not dealing with this virus in a very smart way, especially states like New York and New Jersey and Connecticut and my home state of Illinois that shut down their economies, but then they didn't do the most important thing, which was keep their seniors safe, and had high death rates even as they killed their businesses and threw millions of people in unemployment lines. So look, if you don't have people working, you don't have businesses functioning, guess what? You're going to have a massive increase in your debt. And for now, people say, oh my gosh, especially a lot of the politicians say, where did this big debt come from? And what did they think was going to happen? It is, it's an ugly number. I'm not sugarcoating this. I mean, we should never, one of the lessons of this is never, 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 never again should we shut down our economy. And by the way, Joe Biden just said last week, if the scientists told him to, and the bunch of liberal scientists surround him, he would shut down the economy again. And then you'd see the debt go through the roof. Incidentally, as we speak, those numbers that you talked about are accurate, from the amount of the debt that we're talking about. That does not include the $3 trillion that Nancy Pelosi wants to spend on top of the $3 trillion we've already spent, on top of the $5 trillion that we appropriated at the beginning of the year. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. It's like, they're passing around money like it's candy. And so if that bill were to pass, I estimate for the first time in American history, government spending would approach 50% of our GDP. That means we'd be more socialist than free market.
Okay, so we're almost barreling towards, I think it's $27 trillion right now, and that's before the $3 trillion, $2 trillion, whatever it may be. I think the Federal Reserve has their own balance as well. So what does that look like? The trajectory, look down the road a couple, 3 years. What does that look like? Are you going to have to implement austerity measures? Do taxes go through the roof? What happens?
I don't know. We've never really done this before. I don't think you can get out of this crisis, obviously, by raising taxes. That just slows down the economy. So I think it's going to require cuts in government spending, some rapid reductions in government spending. But I think it'll also require growth. We got to get this economy growing. We got to have people back on the job. We got, one of the things that really worries me right now more than anything is I saw some statistics the other day that 1 out of 3 small businesses is in financial distress. Yeah. 1 out of 3. Even if only 1/3 of those companies, fail, we're talking about millions and millions of business bankruptcies and tens of millions of lost jobs. So we've got a big rebuilding job to do here. There's no question about it. And my problem is I look at Joe Biden's plan, and his rebuilding plan is basically raise taxes. So I'm not exactly sure how we're going to get the economy moving if we raise the capital gains tax, the corporate tax, the small business tax, the payroll tax. All of these things, I think, takes a lot of juice out of the economy.
Stephen, you're absolutely correct on the small business economy. And this is something that I've been focused on most of my professional life. And this is a question for you because outside of the mainstream media, the mainstream news is not talking about small business. They're talking about the election. They're talking about COVID. But the fact of the matter is that when you have the Independent Restaurant Association of America suggest that 80% of small restaurants, not franchises, but independent restaurants are going to be closing, and you're seeing retail and commercial real estate defaults going through the roof and strip malls and the gutting of our inner cities. What is the White House looking to do? I know PPP, the Payment Protection Program, helped offset some of the pain, but wasn't that just kicking the can down the road for the pain? And once that stimulus ends, most of those small businesses go away?
Hopefully not. I mean, that would be the doom and gloom scenario. But hopefully in the next few months, we're going to start to see, people. And by the way, this is already happening. People are going to stores now. They're going to restaurants more. I think some of those statistics that you're talking about. Look, I'm very concerned about it. I'm not denying anything you're saying, but there were some reports just today that department sales are starting to show some increases. Those are the kind of stores we're all worried about going bankrupt. You're right about the small businesses. I mean, here's one of my big frustrations, by the way, and you as a small business advocate, I think can attest to this, that there was a real unfairness to what we did in April and May and June, where we basically said, oh, well, Walmart can stay open, Home Depot can stay open, Target can stay open, the big box retailers, but not the hardware store down the street or the little deli so that's why it's the most amazing thing, Walmart had its biggest year ever. Look at Amazon, it did unbelievable. Apple's a $2 trillion company. So we kind of subsidize the big massive companies and let them play by separate rules. And the heartbeat of America on Main Street all over the country is the little small businesses that you're talking about. They didn't get the help, and they actually played under different rules. Tell me, why is it's safer to go into a Walmart than to go into a hardware store? I mean, I don't even understand the logic of that.
So a lot of that can be addressed because of the fact that we have a 10th Amendment, we have federalism, and those rules were implemented by governors and mayors locally. And this is not maybe a federal issue. So from a federal standpoint, as you're trying to offset this doom and gloom, which many people, economists are suggesting is a tsunami that's heading towards the shore, maybe once we get past the election, it's going to hit. I don't know. But how do you, from a federal standpoint, try to implement policies when they may or may not be implemented through state or local governments?
Well, I was one of the biggest advocates at the start, and our group really had a big impact in doing. I think Trump took the right approach in terms of saying, look, we believe in federalism. We believe in giving the power to the states and letting states learn from each other. So we did do that. We said, look, this is up to the governors to decide, for their states what they think the best policies are. And there was a wide range of policies. I mean, you had New York and Connecticut and New Jersey and Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania that basically just shut down their economies. But, there are a lot of states like Iowa and Nebraska and Utah and South Dakota and others that didn't even shut down at all. And big surprise that what we found, I mean, there is a learning lesson here, that the states that had the most severe lockdowns, not only did they kill their businesses, they also had the highest death rates, because it actually turned out keeping people shut in their homes with 5 or 6 people indoors wasn't a very smart idea. So, I think it's a tragedy what we did. I am a little bit more optimistic, I think, than you are, that so far over the last 3 or 4 months, we've actually had a pretty good V-shaped recovery. Now, whether we can continue with that, it's tough to know. I mean, you're right. There are a lot of danger sides ahead. But I'll tell you this. I mean, I think a lot really does depend on this election. Obviously, I worked for Donald Trump. I was a senior economist during the last campaign, and I'm on his economic recovery task force. I think it makes a big difference. I mean, I think if you had a really hobbled economy and you elected Joe Biden with the agenda that he's put on the table, I do think we'd be in serious danger of a Great Depression.
Can I get political with you for just a moment?
You may.
We saw an election this week that got short shrift in the news. It was a local election in Massachusetts, Joseph Kennedy against Markey. And why I think that's an important sign for us to watch is because we want to take a look at the two sides of the Democrats that were pushing for one of their candidates. The far left, led by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, was behind Markey, who has moved now towards the far left. And Nancy Pelosi was behind Joseph Kennedy, who for the first time in the history of all that is Kennedy, lost a Massachusetts race to the far left candidate. What does that say about the Democrat Party today? And should they win in November, what does that mean for the country if they are in control?
Well, I think it was a significant race, and I did follow that race that you're talking about. And I'll say, one thing it says is there aren't two sides to the Democratic Party anymore. There's a far left, and period, in end of argument. There isn't any kind of moderate wing of the party anymore. I mean, just look at Joe Biden's agenda. It was written by Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez, and it's an extreme left-wing document that is, in my estimation, the most left-wing document of any major presidential candidate in American history. So I don't say that with any joy. I mean, my goodness, John F. Kennedy was one of the great sponsors of one of the biggest tax cuts in American history. Bill Clinton balanced the budget. He cut government spending. I didn't agree with everything Clinton did, but he did welfare reform. He did the capital gains tax cut. I mean, Democrats are against all of that today. Look, folks, you can vote for Joe Biden and you can vote for the Democrats, but don't kid yourself that this is some kind of moderate party, because it isn't. There's no moderation whatsoever. And the fact that Ocasio-Cortez and Markey have so much power. I mean, by the way, the interesting thing about that race is Nancy Pelosi was for Kennedy in that race.
Right.
Wait a minute. Nancy Pelosi is not liberal enough for the Democrats today? I mean, you and I remember 10, 15 years ago when she was one of the most liberal members of the Congress.
Yeah. Yeah, and she was concerned, and I think strategically concerned, because she's seeing that this far left corner that was always the minority of the Democrat Party is now in essence power. And that's why I wanted to bring up that as an example. So what does it mean for the small business owner across the country? We've got 32 million small businesses across the country. They employ 67% of all people that are employed in this country. So they are in essence the lifeblood of the economy. What are the two choices that this election is going to be giving, and what results would we see with either of both President Trump or Joe Biden winning?
So, that's a great question. And when I knew that things were going to be good, when Trump was elected, when I saw literally 72 hours after that election, which caught everybody by surprise. Everybody thought that Hillary was going to win, and Trump pulled out that amazing upset. Someday, look at the map. Look what happened to small business optimism. Within 72 hours of the election of Trump, small business optimism just went straight up. It never happened before in 50 years. It just went to an all-time high. And it had been very low during most of the Obama presidency. And the reason I mention that is, boy, what happens if all of a sudden we replace Trump with Biden? I think you're going to see a cratering of small business confidence. Because they're facing higher taxes, higher regulations, just more of an anti-business party that will force unions. Look what's happened in California, where they're trying to shut down Uber operators and Lyft operators. The gig economy is in a lot of trouble. So this is a highly consequential election. I mean, there's very few things that the Democrats are in favor of that would actually help the economy grow or that would help small business.
The regulatory state has been something that Donald Trump attacked right out of the gate. And, his rule was for every new regulation, he would decrease it by 3 or 4. It actually turned out a statistical analysis showing for every new rule, he actually removed 20, 21, 22, I think the number was. It is an incredible reduction of regulations. But as you just correctly stated, you were referring to the California Assembly bill that passed. It's called AB 5 that limits the gig workers. You can have, journalists can no longer freelance for a certain number. You can't drive an Uber or DoorDash or whatever it is until you're employed by union companies. Is that something that you would see that would be oozing across other states across the country and more, Democrat or liberal state assemblies passing?
Yeah, sure. And it would kill I was just actually out in California. There's been a stay on that ruling right now. So I used Uber all the time, many times while I was out there. And I'd asked the drivers, because this is supposed to benefit the drivers, right? And they're afraid of this. They think this is going to, destroy their jobs and the company that they work for, and that Uber and Lyft will just move out. And think about this. I mean, who are the people who would be hurt the most if Uber and Lyft and other, ride-sharing services leave? Well, it's going to hurt, number one, the drivers, the people, and those are hundreds of thousands of jobs of people who do that for a living. But also it'll hurt the lowest income people, because Uber and Lyft and other things are relatively inexpensive ways. These people can't, rent a limousine, right? And so it hurts. This is the problem with liberalism. Oftentimes these policies hurt the very low income people that they say they care most about.
President Donald Trump, obviously well known for his real estate investments over the years. It's how he's made so much of his money. We are seeing right now folks like Sam Zell, institutional investor, the man's worth $5 billion. He's got his finger in a lot of different industries, commercial real estate being one of them. And he has called, and many others are saying, what we're about to see right now with the commercial real estate defaults that are going to be occurring is a Detroitification of inner cities, which is incredibly scary when you think about it. And the reason being is when you have major large companies, Stephen, that no longer need 30, 40, 50% of their employees to get in their car or their subway or train and drive in every single day, you no longer need that office space, and the restaurants and dry cleaners and bars that support those employees coming into the city are no longer going to survive either. What is Donald Trump doing? Is he aware of this impending prediction of doom? And is there anything that the government can do to offset it?
Got to get the economy open. I mean, it's that simple. You got to get people back, let businesses open up, let people go back to the office.
But what about this change, though, of everybody's Zooming today?
Just saying, the single most important thing to try to alleviate that is to stop closing businesses down. I mean, there's no need to do that. Now, I take your point. I agree with Sam Zell and you that this is going to be a brutal period for commercial real estate. There's no question about it. This is a new America. I've been working at home myself for the last 4 or 5 months. I've been in the office, 1 day a week, and there's nobody downtown in Washington, D.C. It's a ghost town. Chicago's the same way. New York. Cities are in for a brutal period right now, no question about it, but not just office space in cities, even in the suburbs. I have a friend who owns a $5 million office building in outside of in the suburbs in Chicago. And he said the rental payments are probably going to fall by half. Well, he's going to have a hard time making his mortgage and things like that. So yeah, there's going to be real pain and suffering, a real adjustment in our economy. Meanwhile, by the way, I live in, as I said, I live in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. The real estate market here is just going gangbusters for housing, for residential. And why is that? Why do you think that is? Because people are leaving Washington, D.C. Why are they leaving Washington, D.C.? Because these imbecile politicians don't do the most important function of government, which is to keep people safe. I mean, too many of these mayors and governors are siding with the criminals. I saw the other day that, Kamala Harris, she's the vice presidential candidate for the Democrats. She called the protesters and rioters social justice warriors as they rape and pillage these businesses. And these are small immigrant businesses that are being, burned to the ground, or where they're coming in and taking everything out and looting. I mean, you just can't. There are repercussions to that. We saw that, by the way, in the 1960s, where the same kind of rioting happened. And it took 10 years for cities to come back from that. And the studies all show, I've been reading a lot of the economic literature about what happened when these mayors allowed the rioting to go on. The people who were hurt the most were the low-income neighborhoods, because their property values declined. So if they're a mayor or governor, listen to this, restore civil order. You've got to. That's the core of being a community.
I agree with you 100%. And what you're seeing right now in the suburbs of DC, you're seeing in Westchester and Long Island for New York. You're seeing it outside of San Francisco and Los Angeles as well. So, water always finds its own level, but the carnage that it's going to be leaving behind is something that is really concerning to me. And I'm not sure if there is a government solution to that. Is there?
Except, the government has to do its job of keeping, people safe. You can't, you can't have the people, going into stores and just stealing everything and, breaking the windows. And, most of the stores, I was in Manhattan not long ago. It was heartbreaking. All the stores are boarded up, and they're boarded up, not A, because they're some are closed, but B, they're boarded up because they're worried that the looters are going to come in and shatter all the windows and so on. Yeah. So, look, this is a tough period, but I do think Trump needs to get, he did something very controversial. He said, look, if these cities aren't going to take care of themselves, why should we spend more federal money on them? It was a controversial thing to say, and I haven't made my mind up about it, but it's a provocative idea. Look, these mayors have to, before they come rushing for federal aid, they've got to take the steps to take care of themselves.
Yeah. Last real quick question for you, because I know you got to go. We are about 60 days out from this election. You are inside the White House as an Economic Recovery Task Force member. You've worked with Donald Trump throughout his administration. How is the feeling right now as we head into this election? Optimistic, concerned? Where are you?
Oh, it's changed a lot in the last 2 or 3 weeks. The conventions really were, I think, a turning point. Democrats refused to talk. They had a whole 4-day convention. They never talked about the violence in the cities.
Yeah.
Not once. This is the number one issue that people are worried about. And all they talked about is the social justice warriors and income inequality and racism in America, and not talking about keeping people safe. And so Trump has gone from being a big underdog to a slight favorite right now. And so now he's down in the polls, but the betting market has Trump right now as a slight favorite. So it's going to be a jump ball election. We'll see what happens, but as long as Democrats continue to defend the rioters, I think they're in big trouble. And also, I think people are worried about how left wing their economic agenda is. What Trump needs, if he's going to win, it's very simple. He needs people who don't like him to vote for him. Because Trump, 54% of Americans do not like Donald Trump. They don't like the way he acts. They don't like his behavior. I like him, but the majority of Americans don't. But he has to get people who don't like him personally to say, I may not like the guy, but I like what he does for the economy. I care a lot about my kids and my family and my finances. And in the end, I think, hopefully that'll happen. But the other quick thing is, the biggest factor, of course, is the virus itself. If the virus is under control, and by the way, right now, all the signs are extremely positive in that regard. You won't read that in the newspapers because they only talk about it when it's going up, not when it's going down. But if we have the virus under control, I think Trump will win as well. But we might see a second outbreak, and that makes things, a lot dicier.
You might see a second outbreak, and there's also the question about mail-in balloting as well. And I know Bloomberg and
I'm not an expert on that one, but I'm worried about it.
Yeah. The White House Economic Recovery Task Force member, Stephen Moore, greatly appreciate you taking the time to spend with me, and we'll see you down the road. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too.
A recent survey has found that over 60% of California residents feel that California's best days are over. Many of those people are considering leaving our state in the very near future. The politicians running California, who are supposed to represent us in Washington, have done everything in their power to destroy our once great state, and they will do absolutely nothing to fix it. They are taxing us off to Texas, overpricing us to Ohio, and letting criminals, drug addicts, and the mentally ill scare us off to South Carolina. Is it really any wonder why Californians want to leave? My name is Colonel Buzz Patterson, and I'm running for Congress to represent you, the Californians that our politicians have abandoned. Our history, our families, and our livelihoods are still right here in California. I'm not willing to leave it without a fight. I hope you're not either. I'm Buzz Patterson. Together we can reclaim our home state of California from the politicians intent on destroying it, and that's why I approve this message.
And welcome back, Real Side Radio. Dave Sussman here in the chair for the next 3 hours with you. And as I mentioned right before the break, I'm delighted to have our next guest joining us from Sacramento. This is Buzz Patterson, who is running for Congressional District in California, number 7. For those that haven't had the delight of meeting with Buzz, he's been on Whiskey Politics before, and we've gone into his whole history where he was the carrier of the nuclear football for Bill Clinton. He is a U.S. Air Force pilot, lieutenant colonel, and commander. And again, he was a White House aide in the Clinton administration. He is running for the Republican seat in a very flippable Congressional District 7 just east of Sacramento in California. Welcome back to the show, Buzz. How are you?
Dave, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure having you back. And you and I, we met a couple of weeks ago, and we were laughing over lunch about just the, I would say, the cognitive dissonance that we're seeing right now with voters and what is happening with the two parties and how far left the Democrats have gone this year. Just real quickly, because I saw you 2 weeks ago, we were just in the Democrat National Convention. Tell me what your 50,000-foot view is of, now that those conventions are over, where things stand right now politically for the national election.
Well, you know, I watched both. The Democrat, the DNC was really hard to watch, but I watched them both. That's my job now as a candidate. And I was watching I saw the C-SPAN ratings for comparing the DNC versus the RNC, and the RNC just blew the Democrats out of the water. And I've got to tell you that I was really, I expected more from the Democrats and less from the Republicans because, you know, as we know that here in California, we have Hollywood. Most of the mainstream media is Democratic affiliated. And I thought they would do a better job with the production aspect. And I think that the Republicans, I mean, the final night when President Trump spoke and Ivanka spoke, and then they had the fireworks, I mean, and they had the people on the South Lawn, I thought was brilliantly done. And I got to tell you, from a personal perspective, Dave, having been the military aide for President Bill Clinton and carried the nuclear football and been on the South Lawn 1,000 times, watching for President Clinton, and then watching the RNC and President Trump host the final night there on the South Lawn, it made my heart warm. It was I've been there, like I said, 1,000 times, and watching President Trump deliver that, I thought, very sincere and very powerful message was brilliant. And I think we've seen the poll bump. Biden didn't get anything out of the DNC, and President Trump got a pretty good bump from the RNC. And I think that's why you're seeing Biden coming out of the basement now and trying to somehow cobble together a campaign when he's been doing the rope-a-dope thing over the last 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, we are seeing that. In fact, in just the past 48 hours, we've seen a 180. He went on ABC News last week, and he stated that he can win from his basement. And now he's going to Kenosha, Wisconsin, and he's going to be traveling around. He's in Pennsylvania. Internal polling for the Democrats have got to be scaring them, right, for him to do this.
I think they're really outraged and alarmed, and I think it's really interesting that President Trump was in Kenosha yesterday, which I applaud, and then Biden's going there after Trump. So I think you're seeing the effect of, well, Biden can't be seen by not doing the same thing that President Trump is doing, and I think that plays to President Trump's strengths, right? So President Trump's been out there the entire time, as I have been. We have not taken a day off of our campaign, and my opponent's not doing anything either. He's adopted the Biden stay in the basement approach, which I think is hurting the Democrats. I really do, and I think Biden's a perfect example, and President Trump he's not missed a beat. And Biden and the Democrats have figured out that their strategy to hide in the basement and cower is going to cost them. And I'm watching the polls. And I'm also watching the betting lines in Vegas. And right now, Trump is the favorite. So I'm expecting a big turnout for President Trump. I was also on last night, Dave, with Jessica Patterson, who's the California GOP chairwoman. And she told me, it's going to be, we're going to do really, really well in the national and also with my election. But with the mail-in ballot situation, it's probably going to be days, if not weeks, before we actually know the final outcome.
So I was talking about this right before you came on, and this is something, and I just wrote about this over at ricochet.com as well. I got an article up there on the main feed, so folks can go over to ricochet.com and read I was like a kitten on a keyboard at midnight, typing this thing up. This is the biggest thing that concerns me, because I think all things being equal right now, Trump wins this election in a landslide on November the 3rd. But as others are now starting to report, that the Democrats' strategy is, he may win with people that actually line up to vote, but they are using the machine of this unproven organization of mail-in balloting. And they're going to be using this as an experiment for the real thing. Their dress rehearsal is the real thing. So you're telling me that the RNC is deeply concerned about this?
They're deeply concerned, but they're also, I think, getting out in front. And there's two topics I want to touch on here. The nice thing about what we're doing in California, for example, is in 2016 and 2018, Republicans got our clock cleaned in terms of the ballot harvesting. So now we're on that every bit as much as the Democrats are. So we're going to be doing the exact same thing, which in California, as you know and I know, Dave, is legal, right? So you can go out and harvest ballots. That's a legal thing. And secondly, I think we're already lowering up. So we're already doing the same thing the Democrats are going to do. I know I am in California 7. We're prepared now to, if we have to, challenge every single ballot. It's going to be arduous. It's going to be time consuming. It's not what the founders intended, right? It was supposed to be decided by November 3rd, or the first Tuesday of the month. It was supposed to be decided by that time. And we've changed the rules. The Democrats have, especially in California. And I think that, so we're prepared to fight that fight. And I think President Trump has got the same kind of approach going, where he's going to be prepared to fight the fight. And we're not going to the evening of November 3rd, we're not going to let the final tally. I think we're going to be up. I think President Trump's going to be up big time, but we're not going to let them somehow find ballots in the trunk of cars or coming in with postmarks after November 3rd. We're not going to let that happen. And we Republicans have been nice. We play nice. We've been polite over the years, but I don't think President Trump, and I can guarantee you myself, we're taking the gloves off, and we're going to fight fire with fire.
The Democrats say that they've got 600 lawyers already ready to start flying to the different states. Real quickly, in our last 30 seconds here, how many do we have on the Republican side?
Well, I think we've got several hundred, and okay. I've got 15 in Sacramento.
Wow. Well, I want to talk about Sacramento. I want to talk about California District 7, because the road to taking back the House may go through your congressional district, Buzz. So we're going to be talking about that and some more right after the break here. We've got Buzz Patterson, who is running for California 7. That is East Sacramento. This is one of the, if not the most flippable seats in California right now. And I know from a national perspective, everybody's eyeballing your district. So we're going to be right back here after the break. Dave Sussman in the chair, Real Side Radio. Don't go away, folks. We'll be right back after the commercial.
Feel the rhythm now.
And welcome back, Real Side Radio. We are going to be continuing our discussion here with Republican candidate for California 7, U.S. Air Force pilot, Lieutenant Colonel and Commander, and former White House aide and former carrier of the nuclear football to one William Jefferson Clinton, and that is Buzz Patterson, who is in a very flippable seat in Sacramento, California. Buzz, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
So, okay, let's get the lay of the land, because I know that the White House and Congress are taking a look at the map of California. They believe there's 6 or 7 seats, you being one of them, that they think that they can get back. Talk to us a little bit about the difference between what happened in 2018 and what we're going to be seeing this November with you.
Yes, so the White House, I think in 2018, President Trump was more concerned about holding on to the Senate, and he did, thankfully. And now he realizes that he's got to do both. He's got to hold on to the Senate and grab back. Prior to in May, it was 18 seats in the House, but now he's got 17 seats because Mike Garcia won. A Republican flipped California 25, which has been held by Democrats since 1998. So my district is Democratic +3. Latest poll has us up by 5%. That's probably going to change dramatically because my opponent, Ami Bera, has got a lot. He's got Pelosi cash, a lot of money. The thing about Ami Bera is he's been in the seat for 8 years, hasn't done anything for the district. He votes with Nancy Pelosi 100% of the time, not 97, not 98, not 99, 100% of the time. So my approach is, as a former military guy, that Sacramento County can do much better than a guy who's basically just a Pelosi lapdog. And we're going to go after him, man. We've got a real good shot. I know the White House is watching us. Again, they picked us out as one of the 6 that can flip. Mike Garcia's already flipped one, so we've got at least 5 we can take. And if we do that, we're well on our way to giving President Trump the 17 seats he needs. And, and let's just pray and hope that we have a House that President Trump can depend on and not have to put up with another 2 or 4 years of people like Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler and Nancy Pelosi, tugging on his coattails and trying to create some kind of Russia collusion thing or impeachment thing. We've got to give President Trump the best possible tailwinds we can give him, and he has not had that the last 2 years.
Listen, the Real Side is on 73 stations around the country on the Salem Radio and GCN Radio networks, as well as 6 television stations. First of all, tell everybody where they can find you and support you, your website.
Website is Buzz, the number 4 Congress, buzz4congress.com. I'm all over Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Parler. But the website, buzz4congress.com. And we're getting a lot of national support, David. I think people are realizing that this is a pivotal election for President Trump and for Republicans. So we're getting a lot of help, not just from people in California 7 and Sacramento. In California, but across the nation, people are weighing in. So they understand how important it is for conservatives to win California and give President Trump back some seats.
It's really interesting because you mentioned the number 17, 18 seats, flips the House and takes the gavel back from Nancy Pelosi. So tell me a little bit about, from your perspective, we've just spent 24 hours, a little bit of Schadenfreude, laughing at the hypocrisy of Nancy Pelosi getting her hair did. Now she's coming out and saying it was all a setup and this and that. But do you think, you and I were talking briefly off the air, do you think that the moderate Democrats, the ones that aren't crazy, which means nobody on Twitter, normal people that we hang out with, right? Do you think they're taking a look at this? They're taking a look at the last 2 years of impeachment and Adam Schiff lying that he saw, absolute proof of Russian collusion when there was none. All of these things. Do you think that there is people are exhausted by this and they don't want a reward? Where do you think people stand right now on a national level?
Dave, they've got to be. I mean, I've got liberal friends and Democratic friends. I've got liberals in my family, and I just say, what is enough? And I think that they're starting to see this. And I actually believe, kind of a strange roundabout way, that the COVID-19 thing has actually really kind of brought us all together a little bit. And I think you're seeing a lot of things that affect not only the nation, but in California, that cross party lines, right? So we've got small businesses like the salon in San Francisco that Nancy Pelosi violated. That lady is not a Republican or a Democrat. She's a small business owner. Same thing is happening across the entire country where if you were a small business owner, you've been shut down for 4, 5, 6 months right now. It doesn't matter if you have an R or a D. You're worried about your future, your family's future, your employees' future. And I think people have got to take a look at this and say, Democratic policies aren't working. Look at what's going on in Portland, in Seattle, and in Sacramento, and in Minneapolis, and Chicago. Those are all the common denominator, Dave. They're all run by Democrats. And I think that people are fed up with the anything goes, the Antifa, the violence. And again, I don't think Americans by and large are law enforcement, good-natured, people who are patriotic, and they want to do what's best for their families, for their cities, for their towns, for their states, and they're not getting it right now. And I think a lot of Democrats, if they're honest with themselves, they're looking and going, you know what, this is not working. Joe Biden's incompetent. He doesn't even know where he is. Trump might not be my favorite kind of guy, but he's getting things done. And I'm going to go ahead and vote for a Republican for some change. And I think that's where we're going.
Buzz, I've seen you many times, and you've become a friend. You're a good guy. One of the things that the Democrats have been very successful, because they essentially have the Democrat media complex co-joined at this point. They're just one of the same. Is by branding anybody with an R next to their name, a xenophobe, a racist, a bigot, and this and that. And you are none of those things. Talk to us a little bit about you personally. What it is that you would like to see for your district, so people understand the difference between what the media say and the reality.
Well, I'm a son of a 33-year Air Force veteran. My dad was a pilot, and he flew in Vietnam, and I was raised in that kind of family to serve. And I served 20 years as an Air Force pilot also. And when I watch what's happening in our nation right now, and I'm seeing the violence, for example, downtown, these different cities, I wore the American flag on my shoulder proudly. For people to exercise their First Amendment rights. But I did not wear that flag on my shoulder for people to burn and loot and destroy people's futures in their lives. And so I want to take the same oath of office that I took when I joined the Air Force back in the 80s, Dave. I want to put my hand up again on Capitol Hill and swear my allegiance to the Constitution and to defend the Constitution. And do it once again. So I've been out of service since I got out of the Air Force in 2001, and I want to get back into service. And I think Sacramento, I think California, I think the American people need more people like me coming with a fresh perspective outside of the political system, right? I think politics is broken in D.C. in a lot of ways, and I want to be a breath of fresh air. And I've already told people I'm not a politician. I probably never will be. Hopefully I never will be. But I want to serve our nation. I want to serve California 7. And there's a lot of people like me that are running for the first time. Dan Crenshaw is a perfect example. There's people in California that are running. Mike Garcia is a perfect example. We've got people who've never run before that serve in the military, that understand discipline, organization, and service, and the importance of being an American in the flag. And that's who I am.
In our last minute here, what 1, 2, 3 issues are you going to be focused on first?
Small business recovery coming out of COVID. We in Sacramento County, we're looking at probably 35 to 40% not making it. Small business. I'm talking about the mom and pop shops. Right? I'm not talking
devastation.
About right. Total devastation. Bars, hair salons, restaurants, that kind of thing. I'm also looking at very, very closely. I mean, we want to support law enforcement. I think defunding the police department is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard in my life. We are a law and order society, and I'm a law and order candidate, and I want to be there for our people to give them sanity, security, and sereneness. So let's serenity. Let's do that and get out.
Serenity now.
Yes, exactly. Let's do it.
Drop your website again so people around the country can find you, Buzz.
Yeah, Dave. Thanks so much. Yeah, it's buzzforcongress.com, buzzforcongress.com, and we appreciate whatever help. Just log on, ask me questions. I always answer every single response I get or reply I get. I respond to you. So reach out to me. I'll reach back out to you.
Let me say one thing about Buzz, because I'm connected with you on social media. You're prolific on Twitter and other social media platforms. You are responsive. You've got a great following, a great feed. You are there, and everybody should definitely check you out. And like I said, winning back the House. It isn't just about winning the White House. It has to be winning back the House, because if as you correctly stated, Trump wins and you still got Nancy Pelosi, it's just a continuation of the investigations after investigations, and nothing can get done in that way. So we need you, Buzz, and we're hitting the final stretch here. I wish you nothing but success and luck, and I'm sure I'll see you off air soon. So thanks for joining us,
Thanks
Buzz.
so much.
Cheers, my friend. And we'll be back here right after the break. Dave Sussman here, Real Side Radio. Don't go anywhere, folks. Thanks to Buzz, and also to Stephen Moore, a really busy guy working in the White House, sharing some time with us about what is happening with the economy. But I'm interested to know what you think, whether you're watching this on the independent.io or the Range Broadcasting Network, or even on YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed to us on YouTube, smash that subscribe button. That's what the kids say. I have to say it. Smash and like and do all those things. Share it out there so the world can find our show. And also, you may be listening to us on your favorite podcast application, whether it's Apple Podcasts, maybe it's Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or if you are watching or listening to us at the Ricochet Audio Network, a great site where you should become a member and have great conversations with folks all across the country in a civil way, a very civil discourse on ricochet.com. Let us know what you think. And greatly appreciate you taking the time, spending it with us here at Whiskey Politics. We know that you've got a lot of other podcasts to listen to or watch, and so we do appreciate it. We'll be back again next week. Got a fascinating guest lined up. We're just lining that up right now. You don't want to miss. And have a great weekend. Cheers, everybody.